be very good operators, period. This is an asset management game in which you're deriving value from assets that aren't just going to float on the back of appreciation in order to earn their returns. And we've often noticed that those that do well in this space are really fine-tuned market observers, which means they're sharpshooters. They understand this space better than anybody else and can really see value where investors that are maybe looking from a higher level, a higher elevation, just aren't able to see it. And those that we'll talk about include suburban office, retail, and hotels. And I'll move to those unless, Adam, you have anything to add regarding this corner of the framework.
Only to underline the idea that this is the space in which really talented operators are manufacturing value, right? We don't have the demographic tailwinds. We don't have the radical or fundamental change in market size. But what we do have as a customer, we do have the ability to provide better product, and we do have the ability to generate enhanced NOI through operating dynamics. And so, whereas we love the investments in the green category that we talked about, which are really more about sector, we are acutely aware of the fact that in the things that we're going to talk about in a minute, there is the potential to, harvest value, create cash flow, and enjoy that, through good old-fashioned elbow grease.
Yeah, fantastic. So one of these opportunities or potential underappreciated opportunities that we mentioned is suburban office. And as you can see in the chart that describes long-term cap rates for both CBD and suburban office over time, alongside the spread between those rates, this product type has become increasingly less favored, has been challenged over a long period of time, certainly even before the Great Recession, but certainly afterwards, as we've seen jobs and households both moving back into city centers. And so to a certain extent, we recognize that the risk premium that investors in suburban office buildings are requiring is likely rational. At the same time, we have to ask ourselves, is this, first of all, I guess you need to ask yourself, is the premium wide enough? Are investors getting adequately paid for the risk that they're taking going into suburban office? But on the other hand, is this too much of a premium? Is the risk really not commensurate with the premium that you're earning in this? And then, of course, you need to ask yourself, is this true, or should it be true everywhere? And are there opportunities, specific building opportunities or portfolio opportunities that are just painted with too broad of a brush? As we've mentioned, real estate is inefficient. Every market, every individual parcel is unique. And surely there are opportunities to invest in suburban office that the market may be overlooking or overpricing, and patient, skilled operators may be able to find those.
Right. And it's that idea, Taylor, of, painting with a broad brush, or that observation maybe that's happening, which we believe creates a condition in which value can be realized, right? The idea here is not that suburban office is mispriced, let's just go buy some and we'll do pretty well, but rather there is inherent pricing and efficiency in the space. And if you pick wisely, if you do the work, if you come at it with a strategy for really reinventing the real estate, you will be in a position to benefit from the fact that, 2/3 of employment in the United States is in the suburbs, right? So shouldn't some suburban office buildings do just fine?
Right, exactly. And there was a question really quickly. We should clarify we're using a bit too much jargon in this slide. CBD stands for Central Business District, so really the urban core of cities.
And in the context of suburban offices, suburban anything, we've been changing our framework to think about, real estate assets in urban places. They might be in the central business district, or they might be in our dense and highly performing suburbs, or they might be in a truly low density context. And again, we see a pricing inefficiency there as well.
Right, absolutely.
So let's flip to retail. And a very similar outlook and framework we believe can be brought to thinking about retail. The headwinds facing retail are obvious and real, and we certainly don't mean to underestimate that or misrepresent risk in this space. But what we do mean to do is to highlight the idea that not all retail assets are the same asset to asset. Not all asset classes are the same even within retail. And then within the retail space, we observe, three opportunities, right? One, this painting with a broad brush phenomenon, that there are very high performing, enduring, long-term cash flow providing retail assets that are simply mispriced because the sector is mispriced. There are retail assets that have tremendous value because of the real estate, not necessarily just because of the historical retail performance. So almost as a land or redevelopment or as a value add asset, the risk is mispriced relative to other value add assets. And this idea of, we still have vibrant places in the United States, vibrant retail shopping districts, including urban districts, including high-performing malls, including high-performing specialty centers, all of which really do sort of demonstrate significant pricing power, and we would argue NOI growth potential that an investor, again, the investor who is willing to do the work, to pick wisely, and to really aggressively asset manage the portfolio, can participate in.
Yeah, and I think it probably goes without saying. We could share another slide that would demonstrate why these vacancies are declining across all of the retail property types. It's because there really hasn't been any new supply added to the market at scale, and we're seeing that across the board. That certainly is benefiting existing properties, even as same-store sales are declining. I think one question I have for you, Adam, on this slide is what about power centers, which of probably all the retail categories are most under threat by the long-term structural trends that we described earlier relative to e-commerce, and seem to be less appreciated, let's say, by investors as well. Is there an opportunity there? You can see in this chart, it's the only one that's increasing in vacancy in recent years as well.
Yeah, well, it's the scariest, right? Because the assets are, the risk of big, tenant loss is the most dramatic in the space. And we've followed all the reading about, zombie retail and this phenomenon of waiting for the other shoe to fill. You don't know who's going dark next and how you would possibly reuse the real estate. Now, the interesting thing about power centers, but probably it's true about the asset class in general, is it's a story of winners and losers, right? So,
right.
In the aggregate, right, the vacancy ticks up, but in reality, the average is generated by a composite of very high performing centers and really very poor performing centers. By the way, there might be assets in either category that represent an interesting investment opportunity. In the poor performing because they're good land assets, and in the high performing because they're mispriced and because the long-term potential to realize the cash flow that you think you're buying is actually pretty significant. But it's kind of the poster child, if you will, for maybe letting the doom and gloom in the space, as real as it is, kind of providing a no-go space for investing. And before we move on, just to answer one listener's question, by power centers, we're talking about kind of mid-sized shopping centers made up of, large box tenants, or at least largely comprised of